Hey, it's David,
I'm Guy.
and this is Kafe with David and Guy.
Thanks so much for joining us, whether you are watching or listening on our podcast.
We're so happy that you're here, and today we're going to continue a little bit of a series we started 2 weeks ago on resilience. But this week we're talking about the process of grief.
Yes. And so we, obviously, as a community, we thought it'd be really important to hold space for the very real process of grief that many people are walking through due to COVID-19. The reality is that while we are all being impacted, affected by this global pandemic, we are each experiencing it very differently. And so
That's right.
we thought actually getting some resources, tools to help us process this and journey through this season might be helpful.
That's right. So while you see our notes are out, it's because we're not experts in this topic. We're literally navigating through the season with you. And it looks different for all of us. We're parents, we've been in situations that have prepared us possibly for a season like this one, whether it was when we were living abroad or even navigating new waters as parents, and having enjoyed most of our 20s without a situation like this.
Right.
But
so I think that's fair. Thank you for saying that. Because sometimes, you see someone maybe walking through a season that may be very difficult for others, and maybe they're just doing it with this, they're doing it as though it's not hard. But just because something doesn't seem hard doesn't mean that it's not hard or challenging. I think that perception is often deceiving, obviously. Coming from a communications background, we're taught day one that, what you see is not always what it is. And so it's so good that you highlighted that aspect of it, for sure.
We're working with the modified Kubler-Ross's
Kubler-Ross. It's actually a German last name, Elizabeth Kubler-Ross.
Right, and it's the modified 7 stages of grief. She came up with 5, but the modified version has 7. So there's lots of different processes to grief, and a lot of different steps and stages. And today we're going to talk about the first 3, which are shock, denial, and anger. But what are the full 7?
The full 7.
I love it. My math skills on the spot in real time.
I didn't even think of it. I'm like, anywho, always focus on the positives, shall we? That is actually not what we're going to do today, guys. But
the remaining 4.
The remaining 4.
There we go.
Gave them some time. The remaining 4 include bargaining, depression, testing, and acceptance. So acceptance is the last one that we're going to cover. We're not going, as David already mentioned, we're not going to do all of them today. We will be focusing on 3, which, as he stated, include shock, grief, and anger.
Right. So shock is that initial response. It's when you first listen to something or find out the news about something that's happening, in this case, even coronavirus, finding out that we're going to have to be quarantined. And it's that initial moment when you found out and immediately you went to a sense of disbelief. Like you didn't believe that this could possibly be happening, which leads to denial, where we're saying this isn't real, this isn't happening. My life is not about to pivot as quickly and as suddenly and as drastically. Within days, right? And the last one is anger. That's the last one we're going to cover today. And anger is simply that frustration. It's this outpouring of emotions that could bottle up.
I like your handwriting. I love that.
Thank you. So that's anger.
Yeah, for sure.
Which we're all very, very familiar with. Right.
And in different ways. I think that's something else that when we were talking about this, we wanted to mention that obviously, this is a guide. It is not, this is precisely what you will feel at this point. No, it is simply a framework from which to build from which to make sense of the context that we are now walking in, that we're all experiencing very differently.
Correct.
So just holding space for understanding that, you may not experience any of these, perhaps, or maybe you're going to experience them out of order. It's not a neat procession.
That just shows how complicated grief can be.
Totally.
Right, that you're not going to go just in one order, and it will look differently for all of us. Anger manifests itself differently for me, as I know it does for you. In different moments, something that gets you upset and really angry might not be a big deal, or to me in the moment, or I don't see it the way you're seeing it, right?
And that makes me angrier. Hashtag marriage. But really, it's real, guys.
But in this season, it's been it's the season has manifested itself very differently for all of us.
Right.
Some of us were expecting to graduate and walk. We are graduating, right? But not getting that opportunity to walk across the stage celebrating our massive wins.
Right.
Some of us, I know I have friends that are realtors, and they're wondering, okay, are the buyers going to show up today? You know, are they going to be willing to put on those masks and gloves and go house shopping? For businesses, right?
Folks, you know, wondering, okay, well, is my company going to even be alive after this is said and done?
Or if you work for the public sector, when are schools going to open?
If you're a diplomat, for instance, perhaps you're in limbo with your family, or
if you're a parent and you're homeschooling.
Yeah.
So the season has literally fostered itself to reshape and be different things to so many different people.
Right.
And in that process, the shock, the disbelief, and the anger is corresponding to such, right?
Right. And it's going to look different for different people, as we've said. And we're going to keep saying that. Why? Because it's actually pretty important to remember that. Because maybe you're looking at your friend and you're thinking, well, why is this person able to do it the way that they're doing it? Or why does it look this way for them? Whereas I feel like my world is falling apart. Again, we are all so different, so complicated. And we really just want to encourage you to hold space for the way that you are grieving in this moment. So we can start with that.
Definitely. Be patient in this season. Be patient with yourself. And
I'm going to steal his notes because he actually made many of these up. And now you're like holding on to me. We're not doing that because you know this.
Right. One of them is to allow space, right?
Yeah, totally. So you're holding space for what's happening in your life. And I think something that you mentioned earlier to me was the importance of basically navigating this in a constructive manner, right? So you're not ignoring the fact that this is happening, but you're choosing to walk through it and to grieve in the process in a way that's honest for you and in a way that's going to be constructive rather than destructive in this season.
Yeah.
And
I know that recently I lost a loved one or a close family friend to the coronavirus. And immediately, I couldn't believe it. This is somebody that I've known my whole life, quite literally. It led to just really being unsettled, not knowing what was going to come, denial, praying for her and believing that she was going to get better. And unfortunately, she passed away. And in that moment, I was angry. I was annoyed. I wish I had called her. I wish I had spoken with her. And I'm thankful that in the process that I reached out to you and was able to share and call a couple of friends. And we were able to talk about the good times that we had with her and how much she meant to us because she was a leader in my community.
Yeah.
And that was really helpful to celebrate her life, to remember the legacy that she leaves behind, and almost feeling commissioned to continue to do good things because of what her life stood for. So in the process, there's definitely really good ways to navigate this season, and then there's terrible ways, right? We can deal with our anger constructively, and we could also cause a lot of destruction with our anger if we're not careful. I know one approach that I've seen firsthand is seeing individuals who bottle up all that energy, all that anger, and the moment you try to tap in and say, hey, what's going on here? The doors immediately close to that conversation. You see that they lose control, and that's one way that we can approach the situation. But the best way to approach it is one that I've seen a friend of mine actually demonstrate. And what he does is whenever he's in a situation where he doesn't know what's happening or he doesn't have the skills and he's conscious that he lacks the skills necessary to overcome in that season, he approaches it head on and he says, okay, what do I need? And he reaches out to people who do have those skills.
And I think that's key, honestly. When you're thinking about, okay, what do I lack here? It's not always about knowing the answer, and our culture does not always celebrate not knowing. But what I've learned over time... I'm
so happy you bring that up.
Yeah, what I've learned over time, quite frankly, is not so much that I be the holder of knowledge, but that I am willing to ask for help and find the person or the individuals who do have the answer, who do have the resources that I need to constructively work through what I'm working through.
That's right.
And so perhaps this might be a season where we allow there to be a celebration of not knowing, and simply just being willing to reach out and being willing to be brave enough to ask for help when needed. I think that that's so important.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah, and also just be patient with yourself, and I think when David was speaking earlier about constructive anger or destructive anger, both are very real, and we don't always like to talk about losing in our culture, right? Sorry, I'm not trying to like beat on our culture, but I'm being honest, and part of honesty is realizing, the spaces where we lack.
Right.
And I think we lack a willingness to engage in difficult conversations as a community. And the reality is that right now what we're experiencing in the time of COVID-19 is loss.
Yeah.
And it's unheard. And I am not going to say the other term that is constantly being referred to as.
Right.
But, in uncertain times, you have to be willing to deal with collective trauma collectively. And obviously, there's going to have to be space for us to deal with it as individuals. Yes, absolutely.
Yep.
But also as a community, how are you reaching out to others? How are you dealing with the shock, the denial, the anger? Is it constructive or is it destructive?
In this season, just keep lifting up your eyes to the hills, keep finding your strength, and keep moving forward. Like you said, we live in a culture that doesn't allow us to do that, or doesn't celebrate that as an accomplishment when you're grieving and you're going through this season. But it's this precise season that's going to equip you so that when you do get to that moment where you get to overcome, you're going to have that foundation that's going to sustain you.
And I really love that you said, like lifting your eyes onto the hills. Like, what is the hill for you? I know that for me, it's my faith. It's being able to be with my faith community. Right. It's being able to really look beyond this moment and know that there is more, whatever it is that we're walking through. And so I encourage you to ask yourself, what is my hill? What is the mountain that I look to for strength and for encouragement? And again, this is hard.
Yeah.
This season that we are all walking through, while differently, is challenging and hard for each of us. Perhaps, again, differently, but it's a part of the reality. And so we wanted to take a moment to just hold space for that, to encourage you to find comfort, and to just remind you that at the end of this, we are going to get through it.
Right.
And I believe that, I think we believe, right, that we're going to get through it.
Do it together.
Yeah. And we're going to be better because of it. It's hard. It's difficult. Feel what you're feeling, but we don't have to do it destructively. We can be constructive, and find means to actually resource ourselves and navigate this journey in a healthy manner.
Right. So we encourage you to find individuals that you can open up to, grow together, and open up and have these conversations that are necessary for our growth as a community.
Absolutely. And so something that's really important to me is routine and tradition.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to, especially in difficult times.
Routines are really important. It's probably the only thing we can control right now.
This is true. Our routines. And so with that, what are you sipping on, my love?
I'm sipping on our dessert coffee, the Esteli.
I put mine down, so I'm going to grab it and sip on it with you as well. We are so thankful for each of you, and we believe in you, and we hope that you have an incredible week despite the challenges that we are walking through.
That's right.
All right.
We look forward to seeing you guys soon.
And hearing from you.
Yeah. Take care.
Take care.